К доске, пожалуйста. И быстро выложи к доске.
Hi guys, James, thank you so much for coming to our show. Let me call our Zoom meeting interview like a show. We've never met before, right? I'm Raisa or Rachel, and I'm with my lovely colleague Sasha as usual. And once we texted, arranged a date for a meeting, and here we are today. And we are going to start off with your introduction. James, an English teacher, an Australian guy who has lived in Russia. That's all I know. Is it true? Can you tell us about yourself, where you live, and what you do for a living?
Okay, yeah.
Why are you in Russia?
And why I'm here in Russia?
Yeah,
that's
yes,
oh,
like what made you come to
well,
Russia?
I'm married to a Russian woman, so that helps.
Wow, yeah,
So I've been
that's a
known
good reason.
I met my wife Anna in Hong Kong in 2015, 13. Yeah, 2013, a really long time ago. And so we've known each other for a really long time. We were traveling internationally for a long time, and then we decided like, oh, let's come to Russia. And it was 2019, so just the start of COVID. I came to visit, and I thought, also, like in Australia, it's really expensive, obviously, to buy anything. And I'd just come into a bit of an inheritance, and we were like, let's buy an apartment in Russia. So we did that. And I was like, I didn't really have any plans on settling here. But then COVID happened. And at that time, Australia closed its borders entirely to people coming back. So I was unable to come home. And yeah, I like made you can even find, if you like search my name, you can find like ABC News articles about me
Wow.
yeah, protesting my country's government for locking me out. So yeah, it's a weird turn of events, but we actually even went to Australia and we tried living there, but it was just so hard for us. And also, like, I don't know, we missed Russia. Like, this is even during the start of the special military operation, which was also made things really difficult. We left to come to Australia, and then the SVO happened, and then all the sanctions started. So all of our money was then just like completely locked in Russia.
Oh,
So yeah, it's
right.
like the destiny has played a strong hand in in me being here. But no, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love this country. I love being an English teacher here. It's one of my favorite place in the world, which is
Cool. So you are a teacher of English. Is that the main and the only occupation, or you're doing something else?
I'm sort of a jack of all trades. So I've got so my wife and I run a business. We've got like a Wild Breeze branch. That was sort of like our bread and
Oh,
butter. And then we have so I just like help her do that, sort of like carry boxes and stuff. My Russian level is not amazing, unfortunately. I'm 3 years into learning it, but I'm still making very like glacial pace with it. But
And
yeah,
how have you been learning Russian, on your own or with a tutor?
I'm just on my own, really. Like just like picking up like reading stuff. Like I learned the Cyrillic alphabet, and then like I know like just through absorbing stuff. And like I don't know, me and my wife, like we talk a bit in Russian. It's like a Russian English hybrid around the house. Like she's like, uh, pass me the politenza, or like boil the chaynik or something like that. Like, and I just like I'm picking up these words from that.
yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of how and then so my work is like, I guess primarily as an English teacher now. I do some like private tutoring to a kid, young kid, where I'm like like in-house. And then also I do like this dubbing project as well. So I'm sort of like spread across a couple of English speaking fields.
Yeah, cool. What's your approach in teaching English? Because now there are so many, and
Mhm.
teachers are very like eclectic in the way they teach. So how can you describe your method or your way of teaching?
I definitely just lean into my strength, and that is like I don't have a lot of teacher training, I'll be honest. I only finished my like TEFL course in 2020, 2023 at the end of the 2023. So the way I've worked things out is like around speaking clubs, and like I feel like I just like to get my kids and my students like talking. I really think that that's like the most important thing. That's how I saw most of my growth in speaking Russian, and my confidence grow. It's just like being in a like safe atmosphere. I try and find a topic and my students' interest, and then I like try and foster a lesson around that. Like, and that's I think it's just like it sort of happens organically. Grammar and stuff, like I kind of leave it up to my student as well, because I like to ask them like, what is your focus? Is it like fluency or is it accuracy? And like some people,
Right.
like for me, I don't really care that much about like accuracy. For me, in my Russian speaking, I really just want to be like fluent. I want to be understood and understand. That's
Right.
that's my bread and butter. But for some people, it's different. Like some people, especially English, a lot of my students are English teachers as well, at like a C1, C2 grade. And for that reason, I like to like, they're like, oh, please, if I say something wrong, correct me. Or like, I will
Right.
like look into like collocations and stuff and like catch them and be like, hey, like I wouldn't collocate my words as you said that way. Yeah, that's kind of my philosophy, I guess. You know.
Right.
What do you think is the greatest challenge facing students today?
Oh, in learning English,
Yeah.
I think, the greatest challenge. It's a really good question that I haven't really thought about before. I think a lot of it, okay, for me in understanding with like my Russian students, the problem is understanding like Russian, English vocabulary, but through a Russian prism, like through the
Right.
grammatical lens. And that's where I'm kind of like, I see like you are speaking to me in a way that I understand because I know Russian as well.
Right.
It helps. Like I've got a bit of the Russian like vocabulary, and I understand synonyms. And I'm like, you're using the synonym that like goes across so many words, but in reality, like we've got a more specific English word that you need to set. Or a grammatical structure that they're using, where like flexible word order is something we don't do in English, which is getting your students to think in that way, I think is the hardest thing to do, because
Right.
it's re-gearing your whole brain to another like a language structure.
Yeah, I was just wondering, being a native speaker of Russian, I can see the origin of some difficulties where these two languages interfere, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And yeah, I was just wondering if you can notice this from this perspective, any difficulties that are typical for Russians, like word order or some
Word
words.
is like really, I think, a really one of the bugbears of it. And I think the worst one is articles. Even my
Right.
best students just struggle with articles, and I like, for me as a native speaker, it's very difficult to explain why they exist, like why they use the problem with collocations. Like I think Russian is a very complicated language, definitely, like in a lot of grammar, but I think in some vocabulary senses it's simpler. Like for example, like много, right? Like много, you can use it as a synonym for much and many, right?
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going. Like my Russian students, I'm like, oh, we only say this is like a many is like it's countable, and much is for uncountable things, and like
Right.
that's a really weird thing, because you don't even have that conception of a countable or non-countable noun, I guess, in some senses in your language in that way, I guess. Yeah, which makes it tricky, really tricky.
But I love that topic. I don't know why.
You love countable and
Yeah. I love to explain it to my students.
Brilliant. Please, I would love some wisdom on how to convey that
But
as
you've
well.
already told, us about the difference between using much and many.
Yes. The articles, I think the articles, it gets really, it can get really complicated, I guess, in that sense of like the standing for this, like specific, and being standing for like any, is sort of how I've taught that previously, but then it does get confusing. Like I was thinking about this actually the other day about restaurants, where you in a restaurant you will order like a Bloody Mary, like in the general,
Right.
but then you order, like if it's fancy, you'll be like, and I'll order the lobster bisque. Like you're not ordering a lobster, like it's like seems disrespectful to the food to order a lobster bisque instead of the lobster, which is just crazy to explain and to think about. But,
Okay, and what strengths do you have that help your teaching, your teaching career?
for me, I think I've got a pretty good handle on vocabulary, which I can't say for every English speaking person, let alone teacher. I mean, like, I think that I was always taught like in a classical education. I was brought up working class Australian, but I guess my parents had very like highfalutin they had pretensions of upper class and being educated, and for that reason, like I learned like one of my favorite things to do with my mom was when I was younger was like doing the crossword with her, and for that reason I've like learned this like huge expanse of things that like I don't know, like it does really help. And also like understanding word origin. Like I don't speak Latin necessarily, but I've really grown to understand like these patterns. Like I'm like what these like, I guess the origins of words come from that, which it helps a bit. And also then that in speaking Russian is helpful because Russian has a lot of like for example, I said this the other day, it was like the word prognosis, and I was like talking about that, and like prognosis in Russian is like the pagoda prognosis.
Right.
Like, and like I'm like, okay, great. Like you can think of that as a way of like reformatting that to fit other ways. You as a Russian, you actually know a lot of English words instinctively because Russian has all this Latin embedded in it, and French as well. And so for that reason, you can kind of there isn't so many vocab you actually have to learn. There's a lot that's already existing in your mind, which I think is cool for a lot of people to unlock.
Yeah, great. And can you describe your worst teaching day? And what did you learn from
My worst
this experience?
that would have definitely come from the start. Okay. Okay. Using examples, like thinking that you can use examples from like modern popular culture is a really disastrous minefield to find yourself in. Like, thinking that you can teach, like I thought that I could teach like grammatical structures through a song lyric or something, and that has just like been completely unfounded. Like those song lyrics, like especially stuff like done by like African American artists, they really like to play with the way that like I have a specific example, but it's eluding me right now. But it came to teaching the first conditional or the second the second conditional. And it just fell apart when I was using like song lyrics as a way of like as a fun way to teach the kids, but then it just didn't make sense in the structure. Yeah, my worst teaching days. I'll have to think of, I'm sure I think I'm repressing the memories. But yeah, yeah.
And
speaking about, yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you working with students? You mean when you said my students, you mean just children or adults?
I'm trying both at the moment. I'm sort of wading into finding who is my preferred like customer or preferred student base, I guess. And yeah, I would say it's definitely easier for me teaching adults, like especially teaching teachers is my favorite. Really my favorite field.
Motivated.
Yeah. They're motivated, highly motivated, highly accomplished, so I don't have to be explaining like basic stuff, and I can sort of kind of go into like auto drive and like have interest. Also, I can have really interesting discussions. Like that's my favorite thing with teachers. I can be like, let's watch a film, or like it's like a book club for me, and I really love to just do that and like discuss like a topic, an article, or like a show or a movie, and then that's really the best work for me. That's super easy and like really enjoyable.
Cool. And I was wondering how you learned English as a native speaker. Like, can you describe the process? Because many people say that, for example, in Canada, they don't go so deep into all these grammatical even terms. So
it's
how
like
did you learn
when
it?
I was like looking through my copy of Michael Swan's like Essential English,
Right.
I was just confronted with these things I'd never heard of. Like I'd never thought in the second conditional, third conditional. I only really in my learning English was taught nouns, adjectives, verbs. Like in this sense of like that was my building block. And yeah, I guess you just come with it like naturally. I do remember though, like when I was a young kid, like one of the things that really helped me was like a book of close exercises, like fill in the gaps. And
Right.
I found I just used to really enjoy that. And like that's sort of what did teach me, I guess, like how to structure sentences. And I think it's probably in a more subliminal way than I guess
Right.
is learning English in a Russian context.
Right, because here in Russia, we study Russian like for quite a lot of years, and we
11.
do all this analysis and not only parts of speech, but this like structural analysis and all of that. So I was really surprised when some of the native speakers told me that like, oh, we've never heard of any terms that you are mentioning. So that was interesting.
It's for me, I think that Russian really requires it in a greater sense. Like English is like maybe more logical. Some of my students have told me this, and I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it is.
I guess in that sense, easier to intuit. But Russian has this thing of like the cases, I think is like a really, you are like within learning grammar, you are then also forced into learning the way that all these word endings are. It's like learning a whole new vocabulary in each case that you learn a word. There are patterns. I appreciate that I'm sort of learning them now, but like for me, it will take years of study to even like get my hand around the Russian cases. I think. Yeah. Also like the genders and stuff, I think as well. Like I mean, I think it is pretty simple. Like actually, once you get your head around it, but like just not having that is like a real strength of English, I feel like.
Right.
And by the way, Russian is a must-taken exam. And have you taken English in your school, in high school?
See, in our high school, and this is where it's really different, is like in a Russian, like if you were doing a Russian test, is it correct that you would be doing like word conjugations, or it's not like Russian literature and Russian writing is a separate topic? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's separate.
In English, it is one and the same. We go in and we say like even now, like the Australian curriculum is quite watered down. We don't actually even study like individual texts. We study things in terms of their theme. So it's like we're studying belonging or friendship, and then we might look at like Shakespeare and like a movie, and like that's our English exams in Australia. So yeah, it's not highly rigorous, and like there is just an expectation that like once you get to this age, I'm sure that if you are writing in your English exam and you are not using proper grammar, they will mark that down and they'll be like, okay, you lose a lot of points for this. But it's more based on your like your points are allotted to your understanding of the topic and your ability to discuss the topic rather than your command of the language.
And by the way, what about punctuation? Is it also marked, or they just don't care about it so much?
I think that I think that it's like in an early school, there's a focus on it. And then like, as you go towards it, they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's like for me, that's one of the things, I guess, like apostrophes, like, and
Right.
there's so much debate. It's such a highly contested topic of apostrophe use, when there is like very straightforward rules on it. However, I would say like 90% of people who are writing English do not use apostrophes correctly. I can see that in signs when I walk around the streets. I'm like, that is not an apostrophe. That apostrophe shouldn't be there, or there should be an apostrophe there. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay,
think-
and what are your interests or hobbies outside of the classroom?
For me, well, I guess I'm like really interested now into like 3D art. Like, so I've been doing little recreations. It actually comes a little bit with my fascination of Russian architecture. I'm sorry there's raining, so there might be a bit of background noise as you hear the raindrops patter on the window. But yeah, so I've been doing like renderings of these my favorite Russian buildings that I see. There's a art style which I really love. It's called Nalichniki. I hope I'm saying that right. And that's just like the wooden window frames.
Right.
Yeah, for me they're like storybook houses. They're like something from a fairy tale, and so I like to recreate them. And I don't know, it's just like a weird hobby of mine. Like making miniatures, I guess, but only in 3D, so I don't need to buy materials. It's all
And
Awesome.
have you ever been to St. Petersburg?
yes, that was my first like metropolitan city in Russia, and that's where I fell in love with and I think my favorite museum in all of the world is St. Petersburg. It's the Museum of Natural History. It's the thing that really captivated me was it's got Tsar Peter's horse and dog that are taxidermied and sitting in the case. And I think they're one of the funniest examples of taxidermy I've ever seen. They look like sock puppets almost. But just the Natural History Museum is like incredible. I think it's the most amazing place.
And
Okay.
what
I thought
other
you would say
cities?
Hermitage.
You see, the Hermitage for me, it's like the Louvre in Paris. Like going there, it's too much. Like it's
Mhm.
I need like the focus on like a subject, because otherwise I could just spend endless time wandering, and then I feel like I haven't seen everything properly. I just like
Mhm.
walked past and like glanced at all of the art. I think I need, but for the Hermitage I need like 3 weeks to like
Yeah.
enjoy, to, like get to it and enjoy it and like feel like I've seen it.
And I think the Hermitage, it's more about exploring the world. I mean, one building can show you a lot about the world, but if you are interested in something local, probably the Hermitage it's not the best thing to
Yeah,
visit.
that's actually very true. Like the art exhibit, there are some things that are the collections that are based on like I think they're like old rooms from like
From
a
the Tsars.
recreation of Tsar's room, which is fascinating. But yeah, I think that like the Museum of like Political History was great for me as well. Like seeing that stuff is like fantastic. It's, I think that like prior to me arriving in Russia as well, like my whole life, I've always been interested in Russian history, Russian culture. And yeah, it's for me, it's like now it's like living in like again like a fairy tale.
Probably in the past, you felt like your life would be somehow connected with Russia.
Yeah, I have a Russian spirit and like yeah, I think I also like Russian women like or Russian like my wife, for example, like there's just a real like I have a real like kinship with her attitude and with the Russian sensibility as well. I think I'm very averse now to like a lot of like Western like tendencies, I guess. And like I think Russians are very straightforward in a sense. Some would say rude, but like for me it is actually like there is like a real genuine like warmth and like and trust that I have with when a Russian is like being friendly to me. I really know they are my friend. In the West, I don't feel that as much, especially like in places like Australia and even so more so in like the US. I feel like it's very not duplicitous, but like kind of surface level. And Russians are like, I don't know. I love Russian people. There's like also the sense of humor, I think I really feel an affinity for.
Cool. And do you watch Russian movies?
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen a lot of the classics. Like I really like Brat 1 and 2.
Right.
It's actually not a Russian produced film, but it is a Russian language film called Komnata no, Cooper 16, I think. It's a movie that's set on a train about a lady going to see the petroglyphs in Murmansk. And it's like for me, first of all, it encapsulates that feeling of being on a train so perfectly. That's my other thing. I love the Trans-Siberian Railway. It's my like traveling like that is like such a novelty, especially for an Australian. And also it encapsulates this like very interesting way of making friends in Russian, and like yeah, I don't know if I will try and find if I could remember the exact title, it would be great. But it's Coupe 16. It's a number.
I see. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Seen it,
I
Sasha?
haven't.
Well,
No.
I'll find it. Hopefully I can find maybe I can find it somewhere, and I'll post it on the link. But yeah, yeah, other films that have like kind of I guess I like a lot of other like older I haven't seen a lot of like USSR films, which I'm ashamed of. It's a bit of a blind spot, but I do have an appreciation for what was it? There was Strugatsky Brothers adaptation.
Right.
Yeah, the one there's like I think it was called Stalker, I think is the adaptation. Yeah, I really love the Strugatsky Brothers. They're some of my favorite authors.
Great. And how do you find the weather and the climate again in comparison with
Well,
Australia? It might be really cold. And
living in Novosibirsk, which is where like I settled. My wife was from Novosibirsk, and that's where we lived for 2 years. That was like pretty confronting. It was like fascinating to see snow. Like as an Australian, it's so odd to like live in a place that like where you have like lakes that freeze over. But I loved it. Like I thought it was really beautiful, and like I am a bit sick of it now, I think. Like, so that's why I have moved to Krasnodar, and I am happier in like the southern climate. It suits me a lot better. The other thing is, I think I got like a vitamin, like I get a vitamin deficiency from like not getting enough vitamin D from the sun. So like, yeah, that's a bit of a problem that I've had to like face with like living when I was living in Siberia. But here it's not a problem at all. Like it barely snows in Krasnodar. And it's like pretty warm most of the year around, and sun.
And can you tell us more about your choice of living and choosing this town? Why did you choose to live there?
Anna's mother, my wife, she had purchased this apartment, but sort of like as this like pre-retirement, like, oh, I'll live there eventually. So we came here and we like in 2019, and we were doing like sort of fixing up the gas, like or like getting the gas attached, which for some reason here is a huge like bureaucratic nightmare. We took like 3 months like just negotiating with the gas company to come and turn the pipes on. But then like we sort of settled here, and like yeah, the town has like developed in this really beautiful way. I am from a small town called Горячий Ключ.
Yeah, truth be told, I've never heard of this town before, and it was Danila.
It's like it's a bit of a
name, and shame on me. Yeah, I never heard of that.
Oh, yes, yeah, he's my local. He's my neighbor, of course. I forgot to. Yeah, so I should mention Daniil. Yeah, so I met him through my dentist actually.
Wow.
She was like doing she was working on my teeth, and she's like, oh, I also know like another English speaking guy, and yeah, and then I saw his channel, and I was like really impressed with how he's like he's speaking, he's able to do like this flawless American accent, just I guess from his based on his time living there. Yeah. it's an odd connection, but yeah, Горячий Ключ is kind of just like a stopover for going to Sochi or Krasnodar. It's like the little town in between, but for me it's perfect. It's like where I grew up, like a town of like.
And how far is it? I mean, your town from Sochi, how far?
Sochi is about, I think, like a 5-hour train ride, I think, and a 1-hour train ride or car ride to Krasnodar, which is perfect, except would be perfect if the airport was still open, but they've closed it just a whole lot last year. So every time I'm taking international or domestic travel, I have to go to Sochi, which is a bit of a pain, but you know. Yeah.
And getting back to the topic about teaching,
Yeah.
do you have any plans, like further plans
Well, yes,
related to your career and development in teaching?
my ambition for this year, but I'll see how I go. I've got a lot on my plate at the moment. I'm doing all my work, and also me and my wife are trying to get pregnant. Well, she's going to try and get pregnant. I'm
You're
not
helping her.
Yes, exactly. So that may put things on a bit of a boil, like a simmer for a while. But I do plan on getting a CELTA qualification. That's like my big hope. I've been doing like preparatory courses. There's a lady who I've actually this is one thing I can maybe help out with. I've done a like short course with this Delta and CELTA adjudicator, or what do you call it? She's like the assessor, and so I've learned a lot from her doing her prelim stuff, and I can send you the link, like the login for that if you want to.
Wow, that would be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Because I was also thinking about preparing for Delta.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, so you're going to be like a CELTA, like, so Delta, if I'm not wrong, is like it's like for training teachers to be teachers. Is that correct?
Right. It's
Yes.
CELTA, and Delta is like the highest qualification. So you
Yes.
have to be like a specialist in the language itself, for example, a linguist, and a specialist in teaching.
Yes.
So you have to have certain qualifications.
Yeah, that's this Joga Congo. She's a Delta person. She's a Delta
Wow,
qualified.
cool.
And yeah, I've like learned so much from just watching her like free videos on YouTube, but then also her paid courses are fantastic, which yeah, it's a pain like with the Russian like payment system that I've had to like it's a huge advantage in having like an international card because I can do these things, but like all my money, all my earnings is tied to Russia, so I'm like having to to like move things around. Yeah, to do that.
Right. It's rather challenging. And here also, if you need to pay for something which is based not in Russia, you have to go outside to some different countries to buy this card. I mean,
Yes.
not to buy it, but to get this card from some foreign bank, and then go back to Russia and pay for such courses like Delta courses preparation or something. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, that's what I'm having to. And then also have that like the thing where my card expired, and like when my card expired, I just had to go to Australia to renew it. Like they will not.
Wow.
They don't even. You can't even get things posted to Russia anymore. Like I tried to get like my card posted to me, but the Russian post and the Australian post don't talk to each other. So, yeah. Yeah, like just back on that like learning those from those courses, like yeah, just how like I really do want to do like a focus course on grammar. Like I really need to feel like I need to understand grammar more, and I need to like properly get that under my belt before I can like kind of call myself like a teacher, if that makes sense. It feels very embarrassing sometimes when I have like teachers who maybe like they look at me like, oh, you're a native speaker, and I am looking at them being like, oh, but you understand my language. Like I just speak it. It's not, it's so far from being able to give like an understandable explanation as well is really still really hard for me to do in so many ways. But yeah, that's my ambition for this year. Tackle that.
Yeah,
Understand.
cool. But that's cool that because sometimes I think some native speakers, they don't think it's important, right? They are just speaking the language, and most of them, maybe not most of them, but some of them think that's enough. But that's cool that you are thinking about looking for the ways to be clear to your students.
I think that it comes with like learning a language. Like because I've tried to learn Russian, that's my big, I think that's my big help. Even though I don't speak Russian very well, like just having the attempt and trying to do it and trying to get your head around it, that is like it just because yeah, there's so many native speakers where I've encountered where they're like, yeah, you just like talk to the kids and like even if you don't understand it, like I don't know. I also just like resting on your laurels is like something I don't want to do. I want to get better at this. I want to make my life as a teacher easier as well. Have less of those bad teaching days, like you said, Rachel.
And by the way, how would you initiate and maintain communication with your students' parents?
Oh, with my students' parents. Oh, that's like my big when you mean like when I have like a kid that like has the
Yeah.
student the parents sitting behind them. Yeah, I do find that a bit alarming and I don't I mean I it's like for me like I had a kid and his thing was like he really liked like horror stories, right? And I'm like cool, like let's do like horror based stuff, like let's tell some scary stories. And then and I had the parent who was like, oh no, he's too young for that. And I'm like, you can't like shouldn't interfere, like if that's the kid's interested in it and like I don't know, that's I do have this like worry about the intervention of the parent. The parents are often like, in that case, like they're just like concerned about their child's emotional maturity, maybe, or their, but there are also like other concerns about like sometimes the parent thinks that their child is far better the level of what they're speaking than what they actually are. And especially if they don't speak English, like they'll be like, oh, my kid is brilliant. He can talk and talk and talk. And then you're like actually sitting and you're like, this kid is like really struggling. Like he has a lot of problems and like, you know, I wouldn't be ready to like have him in like a speaking club necessarily, like with like, and that's where I have a lot of, yeah, sometimes where I'm like, your kid might not be ready for a native speaker lesson yet if like I'm not able to converse in Russian with them to explain things and to like so yeah it's I am getting better with that though. I'm trying to unwrap my head around that you don't actually need to speak Russian to teach English to Russians, but it's hard at the start especially. I think.
Okay, and talking about parents, how do you usually communicate with parents? In Russian or in English?
So usually I'm like, please contact me on WhatsApp, and then I'm just getting it into Yandex Translate, and like, I know it's probably a bit weird. I probably sound a bit strange sometimes, but also my wife, like sometimes like they'll send me. A lot of people send like audio text, so I'm like, Anna, tell me what this says, and then like, yeah, this is this.
I mean, you didn't have any problems with your communication.
No. Generally, I'm quite okay. I can kind of understand most of the time. Generally, like just based on intent and like tone, and then the rest I sort of pick up with my limited vocabulary. I kind of yeah.
Like politense.
Yes, no the politencia. Yeah. It's I guess again like that's probably why I do have a more focus on adult speakers at the moment. I am doing a summer camp come June though, so I'm going to be on site teaching 2 weeks of lessons. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully okay.
Is that offline or online?
That's in person at a at a
Wow.
camp in Moscow. So that's going to be like my intensive teacher training.
Yeah. Can you send us the link?
Yeah, sure thing. It's Euro Club, but I'll send the link along.
Yeah, that could be really
I've got
interesting.
it's going to be very interesting. They've said that the student range is from 6 years old to 17 years old. So I'll see how that goes.
Is that your first experience like that?
My first experience in like in a summer camp, but I'm actually doing this weekend like a similar. I'm hosting speaking clubs for children. Just really that's like that's the real challenge, I think, is like teaching children is like trying to not come off as like condescending or like speaking down to them, but at the same time too finding stuff that is relevant and that you can all like is like cross, not cultural, but like cross, yeah, able to communicate despite like our huge age difference, which I'm like, yeah, grappling with. But yeah, so like for instance, in this one, I'm coming up with like questions for like, what do you want to be in the future? You know, I think that's kind of interesting, maybe. So like asking a lot of questions about like jobs, like what do you think is the most interesting job? What do you think is the most boring job? Like, I don't know, stuff like that to just see how kids can communicate and hopefully get some interesting answers rather than just like the standard like, oh yes, I like doing this. I have 2 brothers, 3 sisters, you know, like that's what I really worry that I don't want my speaking clubs to turn into. Yeah.
Right. And how do you motivate your students to become active learners in your classroom?
Good question. For me, I guess, background actor. My motivation, I guess, like, I think some of it comes in as like people want to see, like, sometimes people just want to talk like at my level, I think. That's a big thing. It's like they see that I can speak fluently and that like I have some terms of phrases and I can be sort of creative with my language, I guess. And they can see like, oh, it's more fun, I think, than like learning straight grammar rules and stuff. Also sometimes maybe I can be like I can also, I think a lot of Russians really want to see the world outside Russia. And to have someone as like that sort of an ambassador for that is like kind of fun. Like I haven't just lived in Australia. I've like lived Asia, like America, Europe, and like I get to sort of like I don't know, like to do that. It's like opens up that idea that that's possible to them, which I think is powerful. And English and like the English is your ticket to do that, I think, for a lot of people. Like,
Is it, by the way, the only language you know?
yes, English
And that's enough, right? This is what you can show the people. That's enough. I've been to Asia, I've been to the United States and to even Russia, and it works everywhere.
Yeah, you can get a lot of places just by speaking English.
Right.
It really opens the world up to you.
And have you ever had the idea of learning any other languages?
I originally, when I was in university, I had to study French. It was like a mandatory subject in my international relations and politics thing, and I didn't go too badly. I think I passed my first semester, and then dropped off considerably when it came to my next one because I think I just didn't. It's very hard to motivate yourself to learn a language when you live in Australia because English, like you're just told, is reinforced to you, like how important it is to learn English, you know, and like there are very few other like neighboring countries that we would require another language to travel to. So I think that's sort of like kind of hemmed me in. But yeah, I really wish I'd started learning Russian a lot earlier in my life. It's like that thing where like even English students, I mean like Russian students who have learned English, like they come out and like, oh, I didn't really learn any. I learned it in school, but that's nothing. And I'm like, no, it's still a big help. Like having those basic things, like it's like a very like a big assist in learning any language, I think, like to get you over that threshold. I'm like, I don't know. It took me a long time to get my head around the basics of Russian. So, you know, you've already got
and I think it's even more challenging in terms of learning Russian because there are no proper books.
Yeah,
right?
Yes. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
exercise books or even grammar books that can explain all the mess. So it's kind of
That's
And
one way of
hard
describing it. Yes, I think as also like teachers, like I found some good. There's a brilliant guy on YouTube who I've subscribed to, is a guy called Sergey, and he lives in Vietnam, and all his things are just like slow Russian stories or like things, and it's just like that same idea. It's like interesting stuff that I like get to listen to. I think now there's like a bit of a renaissance. Like there's some really great Russian to English speakers who are and like that's all through YouTube. Thankfully, the internet age. But yeah, we've had there's a big lapse in that. Like we don't like textbooks. It's really difficult for me to find a textbook that explains stuff in English and then puts it into a Russian, like is Russian exercises. So yeah. Yeah.
I got it.
Great. And how about using authentic materials and resources in your classes? Do you
like
do that? And yeah, can you recommend?
for me, I guess like yeah, I have like a lot of for my like more advanced students, for instance, like I really love to just deal with like maybe not news topics, because I think news is a bit depressing. But like New York Times, like, I love the New York Times or the Washington Post, like looking at articles about just about like opinion articles in particular, because it does get this like conversation going. Like I had like one that was talking about like enduring friendships that I did recently. Oh, one that I really liked was about like physical media, like why physical media is returning. And I don't know, I think it's like that's like a fun way to talk to my, like they're interesting subjects in any language, but bringing them back to English is like really fun, because that's the text, the language that they originate from. Yeah, I don't know. I think with when I'm working with my more like lower level students, I like to get stuff, and then my big assist is like AI, like ChatGPT or Bard, and then there's this new thing I've been introduced is called Twee.
Yeah.
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 And that it like, to grab that stuff and then be like, can you like simplify this for me? Like, can you make it into a language that like a B1 level or an A2 level to discuss? And that's really helpful. I think a lot of the time those newspaper articles are written in a very heady, where sometimes where I'm sitting there with a dictionary being like, what does that word mean? Even for something written in my own language. But yeah.
Okay, great. And how about watching videos, YouTube videos, or maybe TV shows?
Yeah, I have some definite favorite YouTube. I guess a lot of people like they like to like watch Friends and The Office and like a lot of these. They're really good. My wife like said she like basically learned English off Modern Family,
Mhm.
which one of the things, yeah, so I've just like trying to get a like, I guess like I sort of give the student that as like watching material. There's like a website that gives you really good subtitling. I can't remember. Actually, maybe it's closed now. It's actually I think that they got shut down because of because of copyright claimed. But they were fantastic for these like specific shows that I there was one that I really liked. End of the fuck. I don't know if I should say it in the expletives on the teacher's channel, but it's this like end of the effing world, and it's like a great text for teenage students, particularly because it's this beautiful like visual style, very simple language, and a very like relatable plot, which has these like yeah, which I really like to find.
I'm asking because I'm a big fan of using authentic materials based on different TV shows, and I'm keen on watching and using materials based on TV shows. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite shows? Please.
Black Mirror.
Yes.
Some episodes, of course, not all of them. I've just using materials based on the Vampire Diaries. Maybe you heard this TV show, Vampire Diaries.
Oh, Vampire Diaries. Okay, yes.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Is it a Netflix series?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Mhm.
I'll track it down. I'm always looking for stuff that is like that yeah, like something that is especially trying to find that B2, B1 level sweet spot, because that's where a lot of my kids are. They're teenagers. And that's their perfect level for their material.
Okay. And are you preparing your students for the exams?
I sort of did
Like
some.
ОГЭ, ЕГЭ.
I
Do you know?
I
Do you know these Russian exams?
I know of the test, and I don't like have preparatory materials for it. Like a lot of my students are actually coming to me, they're like, I want to pass CAE or IELTS, and I've tried to do some of that stuff. I don't feel like I'm overly qualified for that, though. I think it's a very specific field to pursue. I don't know about it. I'm hoping that like me just doing like my background English knowledge and teaching is giving them some help in that in the IGT. Wait, what are they called again?
ЕГЭ, ОГЭ.
Yeah, Orga. Yeah. So in those tests, I hope that that's enough for that. But like for stuff like IELTS or CAE, that's like a really like high level and I think very specific like stratagems which need to be taught to pass those tests, which it's a bit beyond me at the moment.
Right. That's a lot about strategies, by the way.
Yeah,
So, but
especially the speaking exercises as well. You can
yeah,
really get away with like not having a perfect knowledge of English as long as you kind of know where to stay and like, keep it in the framework of what you know.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but actually, I think it's impossible for one teacher to give everything. So that's okay that you are giving a lot of speaking practice, right? Some other teachers can be helpful in something else.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's cool because you are giving this very natural experience
Yes. Oh,
that you can really actually find in Russia.
yeah.
So
I think it's
that's
also fun.
just amazing.
It's fun because I can tell my students I'm not like, so I like, like having like an alien existence to them. I'm not like sitting and living in Oxford University. Like I'm actually like, yeah, I went to Pecharchka today, and then like this old babushka like begged me for some change, and like I don't know, like just like yeah, it's been snowing a lot. I like it, just like being able to have that commonality experience is like really great. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we can be finishing,
Yeah.
right? Thank you very much, James. That was really interesting. Thanks for coming and sharing your experience. And it was really cool to learn about it, about your life in Russia. And I hope that's not the last time when we see each
No,
other.
I'll be back definitely.
Yes, I hope we'll be doing something together, maybe some
Yeah.
other projects.
Yes.
And yeah, that could be really great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll do my plug. So if anyone is like, interested in doing lessons with me, like please contact me via Telegram or my
Are you
WhatsApp.
in social media? I mean, do you have any blogs?
Everywhere.
I have an Instagram which I don't use too frequently, but I guess I'm just active on my messaging. If you message me, I'll get right back to you, I guess. It's like yeah, but I do have an Instagram which I'll leave because why not? But yeah,
And why? By the way, why? Why do you believe?
For me, I'm just like sort of retreating from it. I guess I think I've got like I'm one of those I'm a real addict. Like it's very easy for me to get hooked on the social media algorithm, and I need less time with my phone and more time reading and like focusing on my like stuff that actually matters. Although I do understand now that like for a lot of people, Instagram is a very powerful advertising tool that I'm probably missing out on. But yes, good with the bad.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll
you
leave.
need to create a YouTube channel. Yeah, that's really awesome. like an Australian in Russia or an Australian.
No, just
reads in
visit
bed.
our channel. Just visit our channel. That would be great.
I'll happily do some collaboration. Yeah, and
Yeah, we'll just do all the job around it. Just come to our channel. That's great.
Brilliant. All right. Yeah, sounds wonderful. I really look forward to hearing from you guys, and yeah,
We
see you
really
next.
appreciate. Thanks for coming. Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Have
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
К доске, пожалуйста. И быстро выложи к доске.